Yeah, I want to call some attention to the Civilian Marksmanship Program, and it's been around since 1903. It's very interesting because originally it was 100% sponsored by the government to produce a citizen soldier, just like George Washington talked about. And actually, if you look back to ancient Rome, that's how it was like in the beginning when you had the Roman Republic before it became an empire. Kind of looks like the United States is eerily going the same way from republic to an empire. Isn't that true? Um, I find it interesting as a side note that many times a lot of things that happen in the United States, if you look up what happened in Rome, it'll kind of tell you what's going on. That's why conspiracies do exist, but it's been human nature forever and ever and ever. And you can look back in history and see the same things are going on. I don't like Alex Jones too much because he really gets people worked up too much. And I want to bring this out because this is a civilian marksmanship program. It's like for people like Alex Jones, and it's partly true. I'm not saying he's not totally mistaken, but not everybody in the government is like trying to run roughshod over the population. And we just need to remember the Bill of Rights more than anything, which is, freedom of speech and right to bear arms, the first two, and freedom of religion and that type of stuff. And of course, the 10th Amendment, which says any of the rights that have been enumerated in the first 9 amendments, does that mean that you don't have other rights? I like that one. That's a pretty good one. But the Civilian Marksmanship Program has been around since 1903. And actually, this girl is a woman. She's holding one of the rifles that is sold through the Civilian Marksmanship Program. Actually, these rifles come from World War II, World War I. They're originally military-grade rifles. The whole intention was that American citizens be trained to use military-grade rifles, which is the Second Amendment. Not, in other words, in proper usage of it and that type of stuff, safety and all that type of thing. Zero accident rate, which is the preferable thing. Now she's holding an M1 carbine. Now I have one of those. It's stainless steel, synthetic, and all that kind of garbage with folding stock. But I don't particularly. I'm going to recommend, and I'm going to kind of review this civilian marksmanship program. I would recommend that if you get involved in this type of stuff and you're not, or even if you have a gun, a rifle, or have several, I would recommend you get to M1 Garand. That's a very, very good rifle. I have one of those, and I used to shoot a lot. I used to do a lot of reloading and all these different calibers and stuff. And the M1 Garand is actually a very, very good rifle. Even though it hasn't been used in the military since 1957, it's a very, very good rifle, and you get some good prices on it from this civilian marksmanship program. Now, she's holding an M1 carbine. I tend to see that they don't have that much. I mean, you don't want to get shot with a thing, but obviously it's not like it's still a dangerous weapon, but it doesn't have the punch of the M1 Garand by any means. It was designed to be used in place of a pistol. Basically, it's like a pistol ammo. And I find that they can jam, and like I reloaded these cartridges, and if they're a little bit shorter, you make them a little bit shorter, they tend not to jam too easily. But standard length cartridges tend to jam, so I don't know, I just figured to point that out there. I would go for the M1 Garand, and actually they have a website here. It's odcmp.com. I'll sales of the M1 Garand. This is actually from the entity that is selling these. Now, this is a private corporation. Originally, it was 100% government in 1903. Then in 1996, they were getting a lot of flack from the anti-gun crowd, so they made it into a private corporation. But basically, it's not really private. It's kind of like a hybrid. It's kind of like a quasi-private, semi-government organization. So you can actually pick up M1 Garand rifles from here. And I think these are good ones to have because it goes in all these different things like rack grade, fair, field grade, service grade, collector grade. You don't need to get anything like collector grade or anything like that because then they start getting expensive. Correct grade is 1150 or more, and collector grade is 1,595 or more. Probably like service grade or something like that. And I picked up one of these. I don't know. I picked it up a long time ago, and it was accurate. It's still accurate. I think it was like $400 or something like that. It wasn't even that much money. That was quite a long time ago, but still, I don't even know if it was four. Maybe it was 300. I think it was 300 to tell you the truth. I'm going by memory. But these are actually very, very, very good rifles, even though they're old. And they all work. They're not selling you something that doesn't work or it's broken. They will work. And the 30-06 cartridge is actually a very powerful cartridge. It has distance and all this type of stuff. It's a good weapon to have. And it's interesting. Very true and interesting. Like if you look on here, as it currently exists, the Civilian Marksmanship Program is a private nonprofit or corporation whose purpose is to facilitate an interest in the marksmanship by U.S. citizens. Now, it was originally part of the government to bring about citizen soldiers, but as it still currently exists, this is more or less a quasi-governmental organization, even though it's private. It's to bring an interest in marksmanship by U.S. citizens. And actually it works with the NRA and all this type of stuff. So, this is actually a very good way to actually approach getting into, rifles or whatever the heck it is without getting into all the movie crazy shit. And because if you get involved in this, you can get a very good deal on a very strong rifle. And the whole idea was to have American citizens familiar with the exact same equivalent that the military used. It's a citizen soldier. It's the whole idea behind it. That's really what keeps everything together and keeps our freedoms together. I always look at some of this stuff about, the gun control and all that type of stuff. But, I look at all the crazy things that somebody can do if they wanted to. I talk about an automobile. Somebody can run somebody over with a car. Well, you know what? Let's just talk about every electrical appliance that's in your house. Now, if a person wanted to, they can cut the wire on a power cord for an electrical appliance and electrocute themselves. How often does that happen? Not very often, does it? It's like there's a million ways people could do something stupid. But I think the real argument for the gun control crowd is really more or less coming from big money that is looking to control people. So, but I think this is a very much more smarter way of going about things. See, I wish somebody like Alex Jones, which I think is, he smells like something's wrong with him there because he's like gets people worked up. If he was actually some good voice that was really 100% honest about this stuff, he would be bringing out more of this stuff about the Civilian Marksmanship Program. Maybe putting some kind of cool things with it or whatever the hell it is that would just get people interested in it, that type of stuff. And, remind people that the whole idea behind the Civilian Marksmanship Program was to make sure that the average American citizen knew how to use the military-grade weapon of the day. That's exactly how it was for the whole time. So, that's probably the best approach. And I just want to point out, if you don't have any good weapons or anything like that, this would probably be a good one to do. I mean, it's the same weapon that was used to fight the Nazis and stuff, right? So, hey, what could be wrong with that, right? There was a just cause there. And, you could probably get a very good deal on it. And they are very reliable. They are very reliable. I would get the M1 Garand in a decent condition, whatever you can say. And if there's a little thing wrong with it, you can always, if it's not perfect, there's like a gazillion parts made for these things that you can actually upgrade or put a synthetic stock on it or whatever the hell you want to do. You want to put scope on it or whatever the heck you want to do. They are actually very, very, very good weapons, even though they've been used in the Korean War, World War II, and they're going back like 50 years or more. They still are very, very good weapons. And I think this is a very good approach to things versus, screaming about black helicopters and drones and Alex Jones sensationalizing what the Illuminati's going to do and that they're after us. Well, let's just keep things in perspective as to what the United States and how it was formed by. We have certain inalienable rights, and, right there on the top of the list is freedom of speech. And I guess the teeth that keeps the freedom of speech intact is the right to bear arms, too. So that holds our other rights together. So let's keep it simple. And, sometimes it's better to emphasize the positive than to emphasize the negative and the fear every day. It's a pretty cool thing to actually use. And you can actually also, get 22 caliber weapons through them, too, at very good prices. And I would recommend probably if you have the money to get two, because the 22 caliber is, when I used to shoot a lot, I used to shoot the 22 like a real lot, and the center fire weapons I would shoot less because they're more expensive to shoot, but you still get the basic marksmanship skills from firing the 22, so it's very economical, and that's what you want to do. You don't want to spend a lot of money, but you want to get some maximum benefit.